It didn't start with you, but it can end with you. What if some of your deepest fears, your unexplained anxiety, or the feeling that something has always been wrong didn't actually begin with you? It's a question that has fascinated psychologists, neuroscientists, and therapists for decades. In his best-selling book, It Didn't Start With You, therapist Mark Woolen introduces a powerful idea that the emotional pain we carry may sometimes be inherited from previous generations. According to Woolen, unresolved trauma doesn't simply disappear. Instead, it can quietly echo through families, influencing beliefs, behaviors, and emotional patterns long after the original events have ended. At first, this might sound unbelievable. How could someone be affected by experiences they have never lived through? Today, science is beginning to explore that very question. Many of us have been hearing the term ancestral trauma for quite a few years when it comes to therapy and clinical work, especially many of us who are trying to decolonize our clinical work and really confront the ways that white supremacy has shaped our understanding of what it means to be a helping professional. Today, when we look at the scientific or evidence based literature on how trauma is truly passed on or inherited from our ancestors, there is some interesting evidence. A recent systematic review examining 20 studies on transgenerational trauma looked at how the effects of severe trauma may be passed from parents to their children through both biological and psychological pathways. While researchers are still uncovering the full picture, the evidence suggests that trauma can leave lasting effects that extend beyond a single lifetime. Something, as when you hear it right now, may ring very true for you in your own lived experience. And for others, there might be a general dissatisfaction with this idea that trauma can be passed on or inherited. Imagine a grandparent who survives war, a parent who grows up in an atmosphere shaped by fear and loss, and a grandchild who has never experienced either event yet lives with constant anxiety they can't quite explain. According to Woolen, these invisible emotional inheritances often reveal themselves through recurring family patterns, unexplained fears, relationship struggles, or emotional reactions that seem larger than the situations triggering them. The systematic review offers another layer to that story. Researchers found evidence that severe trauma may influence the way certain genes are regulated through a process known as epigenetics. Think of your DNA as the blueprint for a house. The blueprint doesn't change, but epigenetics is like adjusting the lighting, opening or closing doors, or changing which rooms are used most often. The structure remains the same, but how it's experienced changes. One gene highlighted repeatedly in the review is called NR3C1, which helps regulate the body's response to stress. Studies involving Holocaust survivors found altered patterns associated with PTSD in parents and similar biological patterns in their children, suggesting that trauma may influence how future generations respond to stress. Researchers also discovered differences in cortisol, the hormone that helps regulate our stress response. You may think that someone under high stress has high cortisol, but actually, many adult children of trauma survivors had unusually low cortisol levels, not because they experienced less stress, but because their stress response systems appeared to function differently. Many adults, it is as though their bodies had learned to prepare for danger before danger ever arrived. We can really apply this to many of the populations that have experienced historical and structural oppressions, like the enslaved Africans and their descendants in the United States, like the indigenous people in the United States, and like many immigrants who have come through um, economic, and refugee status to the United States. Biology only tells, though, part of the story of how trauma is inherited. Both Woolen's work and the scientific review emphasize the importance of family relationships. Children don't only inherit genes, they inherit stories, silences, ways of coping, the emotional atmosphere of a home. A parent living with unresolved trauma may become emotionally distant, overprotective, or constantly on alert, not because they don't love their child, but because trauma has reshaped their understanding of safety. And children often absorb these patterns without realizing it. Over time, those experiences become part of how they understand themselves and the world around them. This is where Woolen introduces one of his most hopeful ideas. If trauma can be passed down, healing can be passed forward. The scientific evidence offers reason for optimism as well. Several studies reviewed found that psychotherapy and family based interventions improved parent child relationships, reduced biological markers of stress, and in some cases were associated with measurable changes in DNA methylation linked to stress regulation. These findings suggest that supportive relationships and effective therapy may help interrupt the cycle of transgenerational trauma. Neither the book nor the science suggest that we're prisoners of our family history. Instead, they point toward awareness. Because once we recognize the patterns we have inherited, we gain the opportunity to respond differently, to build healthier relationships, and perhaps for the first time in generations, to be able to choose healing over survival. Our past influences us, but it doesn't have to define us. Whether it is trauma carried through family stories, caregiving, biology, or all three, understanding where our pain comes from is often the first step towards breaking the cycle. Evidence is there that healing is possible. And maybe it didn't start with you, but with awareness, compassion, and support, it can end with you.